Hello and welcome to Huddersfield Town's post-match show after a disappointing defeat to Plymouth Argyle. To talk us through the action, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by former Town player Michael Collins and Huddersfield Town's loan manager and, of course, former Plymouth Argyle midfielder David Fox. How are you both? You okay?
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Michael, we'll start with you. Obviously, it is disappointing to be knocked out of the Emirates FA Cup, but equally, what an experience for some of those lads that were out on the pitch today.
Yeah, I think it'll be a case of mixed emotions, to be honest. It's always disappointing to go out of the cup, especially in previous years that I've been a part of. We've had some really good FA Cup trips to the likes of Stamford Bridge, so that's not going to happen this year. But the other side of it is, I'm looking at that team out there today and the average age, and it's quite remarkable, really. And credit to them, I thought they applied themselves very well, and I thought in the end the difference was just that little bit of experience that I think is so vital in any game. You saw it towards the end of the game. I think for the last 3-4 minutes, they couldn't get out of the corner, because Plymouth were clever enough to keep it in there. So I think, as I say, I think it'll be mixed emotions, some good performances, a little bit of naivety in there at times, but that's going to be the case with such young lads. What a great experience for them.
You all have watched a lot of these guys, Foxy. What did you make of their performance, and how can this experience really help them develop and push on?
Yeah, it's massive for the players. I think it was a great opportunity, especially Carlos. He watches the B team games and he knows the players and he watches them in training. But until you actually see them in a game at that sort of level against a professional team, against seasoned professionals, he's not quite sure what he's going to get. So hopefully, this after today's performance, he'll have a bit more of an understanding of a few of the lads. I'm sure some will have impressed him. Some maybe found it a little bit more difficult. But look, it's a great learning curve for the lads. But I'll echo what Michael says, really, in terms of it's a cup game. It's a professional game, and you want to go through to the next round of the cup. And it was a little bit similar feel to the Youth Cup game. We got beat by Newcastle on pens. There was loads of positives and loads of great performances and lads doing really well. But ultimately, there's that little bit that little bit of a sickener that we've not managed to go through.
What do you think the lads would have been feeling ahead of this one? There were, I think, 3 that made their first starts, 2 that made their Huddersfield Town debuts. This is obviously in the starting 11. The feeling before this one, do you think it was a sense of nervousness, excitement, a little bit of both for them?
I hope there's a bit of all those things. I hope they were nervous because it's a big stage for them. I don't think that's a bad thing to have that little bit of nerves, but hopefully there's that bit of excitement and there's that sort of thought in the back of your mind that, look, I'm going to get chances at this club. There's going to be times where Brahim has come on for the first team, Pat Jones has been on the bench. All these lads have been involved. They're not far off it. So hopefully that sort of day in day out experience of playing with the first team lads and training with them means that it's not such a big jump and such a culture shock when they do come in around Carlos and around first team football.
What did you make of the young players, Michael?
I thought there were some really good performances. I've obviously I remember seeing Josh Osterfield at Huddersfield when he was the age of 13, 14, when I went into a little bit of coaching. That was when I was first getting my teeth into coaching, and to see him develop and now be playing in midfield, and I thought he had a good game. He was composed, he kept it ticking. I would like to have seen him be a little bit more aggressive in his play with regards to forward passes, because he's got the ability. But I think it was a nice little introduction for him. And then across the front lines, I was impressed with Jones. He looked very lively for such a young lad. Looks like he's certainly got a lot of promise. But as I say, I think there was there'll be a fair few that'll be quite happy with how they've done. But I just think it's difficult at the moment because it's quite a weird time when some of them are getting thrown in and you're almost making your debut or it's your first couple of appearances. But there's also the element of not having the fans there. So in many ways, it's a little bit like a B team game anyway, where you're playing against an experienced kind of team that have got a few senior players in there. So they won't have felt too much out of the comfort zone today. I think the one thing that will have that will have changed the whole dynamic is that they knew they were technically representing the first team, and they're in the full view of Carlos Corberan, who's on the sideline overseeing it. So it will have certainly had a different feel about it. But as I say, it's a difficult one because sometimes you have to take these risks by throwing younger lads in because I'm sure that those conversations have gone at the time all the time at the club about can you get them B team games that can quite replicate the intensity that first team, and the reality is that a lot of the times you can't. So you've got to take these chances sometimes, and they've done that today. And as I say, I think it'll be mixed emotions because you've got to do it. You've got to give the lads the opportunity to see if they sink or swim, and then unfortunately sometimes when you come up against the likes of Plymouth, who've got a lot of experienced players, that might cost you, and it has done today, which is unfortunate. But they'll be pleased with quite a few of the performances, and as has already been said, that it'll give them a good marker today of who he thinks might quite be ready for the next step and who might need a little bit more time.
Yeah, because you spoke about the positives, and Foxy, you could see, couldn't you, even early on in the game before Romani scored, there was a bit of fluidity about the young players with the ball. They trusted each other when they were finding space and moving, and they just had that air of confidence about them.
Yeah, you'd hope so, because you'd like to think that they'd sort of go into it, like Michael says, there's no fans, but even young lads in general, they don't really seem to have that fear about them. They just go out and they've got no real sort of understanding of what can go wrong. They just go out and play, and they go out and just sort of express themselves. And yeah, you saw that with the start of the game, and I thought they were on the front foot. I thought, the keeper's made a great save from Kieran, obviously scored from the resulting corner. And yeah, it would have been great for the lads to sort of have that, just to settle them down and get themselves going in the game. And yeah, it's that sort of no fear sort of approach from the young lads that ultimately, that's sort of what you get at the start of games. And then, then sort of that sort of experience sort of comes through towards the end, and that nous and knowledge and sort of that power in the legs of seasoned professionals that have been there and done it, and they just seem to find a way to get results, and that's sort of how it panned out. And yeah, that's sort of how the game went, I think.
Yeah, we'll run through the goals now. Foxy, Romani obviously scored from a set piece just 4 minutes into the game. A nice little header at the near post, a massive moment for him. Obviously, he's been in and around the first team this season, and just to go out there and start a game again and mark it with a goal is fantastic for him.
Yeah, it was. Delighted. He'd done really well. He made his debut, didn't he, against Forest early on in the season, and he was brilliant in that game, man of the match on Sky. And then, look, that's just the nature of the beast. And sometimes, that would happen, and he had a little bit of exposure, and then he sort of drops out, and that's sort of how it is. And he's come back in, and yeah, his goal was great. He's made a great run across the near post. It was a great ball in as well, hit the right areas, and that's all you need is a little touch. When the ball into the box is that good, you just need a little touch. And yeah, delight for him to go in, and like I said, it seemed to settle everyone down for a bit.
When you drop out of a first team as a young player, you make your debut, you do well like Romani did, but equally when there's senior players around them that are either coming back to fitness or have just joined the club, Michael, you have to stay composed, keep your feet on the ground, don't you? Because it could have been quite easy for a young player to say, I've made my debut as man of the match, why am I not playing in the next game, and become frustrated or downbeat about it. But Romani's been around the first team squad, fighted back for his place, and got it today.
Yeah, and I thought he had a good performance today. Obviously, he got the goal, which will have boosted his confidence and give him a good platform to build from. And he certainly looked composed, throughout the game. It's always tough. It's always tough for young lads when you get thrown in there. I remember when I was in and around it. It took me probably 18 months to really establish myself. I might play the odd game here and there, might get a run of 2 or 3, and then unfortunately, the thing that you get with young lads is there's going to be an inconsistency there because they're still learning the game. As David said, you're up against experienced pros today, and that'll be the massive benefit of that. All the little, what you call the finer arts of playing professional football, they'll start to pick up on those little bits. And some players take to it and they set off and they fly. Other players take a little bit of time. Each kid, when he makes his debut, he's going to go on a different career path. And as I say, some adapt really fast and they take off, and they're a joy to watch. And all of a sudden, you look at them thinking, the sky's the limit. But it's the ones that you've got to almost keep a mindful eye on, that they've got the ability, they're going to take a little bit of time to find the feet. You're looking at the bigger picture, and he certainly appears to be one of those that might just make the grade, but it might just take him a little bit longer. But I was impressed with him today.
That's the beauty of young players, though, isn't it, Foxy? The fact that you can look at one and say, he's going to fly, he's going to be within the first team in the next kind of 2 or 3 months. And then there's others the way the ability's there, but you as academy staff have to work with him to get that out there and to get him into that first team.
Yeah, you do. And you need to have a sort of a plan and a path for them. And you've got to sort of expose them to certain things before they're ready. And I think, the plan is always, loans. And I'm obviously going to say that because that's what I'm sort of doing at the minute. But it's a big part of the club's philosophy towards these players is that, look, some might need to go and just play 5 or 6 games. I think Muzzy was a prime example. 7 starts at Welling, and then that's all he needs. He's picked up so much from that, and then we'll assess him going forward. But there's certain lads that they need that little bit of time. They need to, like Mark said, learn a few things. Loans are great, and then some might just come in and fly. But I think Lewis O'Brien's a prime example. Went off. Played 45 games at that level, Plymouth League One today. Imagine those lads playing 45 games at that level and where they would be after that. And I think that's sort of where a lot of them will be eventually. Is the talent's there, but they just need to go and get that games, get that power in the legs and get churning out games week in, week out. And if they can do that, the talent is undoubtedly there.
Yeah, and obviously the equaliser. Michael, a good finish from Ryan Hardy, but what did Town, or what should Town have done differently to avoid that from happening?
I think it's a difficult one because I've obviously watched Town on a few occasions now, and I think the manner in which they conceded is always a risky one in midfield when you receive your back to goal. And you take a little bit of a gamble and you try and turn, which I think is what Dehaney tried to do. And he's ended up getting the ball taken off him. And that's the difference when you play against seasoned pros who've got that little bit of quality. That's all it needs. And, Danny Mayer, I think, nicks it off him. And then the 2 strikers have combined. He's on the run. He's gone in behind. And, maybe Hamer could have done a little bit better at his near stick. But, I'm not going to be too critical of goalkeepers. It's not really my area. But I just think, again, maybe that little bit of naivety, but I'm kind of coming away from that because I'm now accepting that that's the way that Carlos wants to play, and over time as they get better, and I think he'll add to the squad with quality to complement the young lads that are in and around it. I think that those sort of naive mistakes will become less and less and less, and so I think that's going to be part and parcel of the package that comes, and it's certainly going to be the case from now till the end of the season while everybody's still finding the feet. But long term, I just think I look at the club at the moment and I think, after the euphoria of the Premier League and then dropping down into the Championship and having to steady themselves, I just see the club getting itself on a real steady platform at the moment to really build from. A lot of young lads that are in and around it. There'll be quite an overhaul of the squad at some point, I'd imagine, as you transition from a Premiership side into more of a Championship side. And then Carlos, I'm sure, will put his stamp on it. So, I try and look at the bigger picture for the club, and I think there's a lot of promising signs there. It's great that he's signed a 3-year contract as long as his staff, because they've got that potential longevity now, and I think everybody needs that. At any club, you need that stability, and they're certainly putting the markers down now, and you can see the roots of that starting to grow.
Yeah, and one of the players that really stood out for me this evening was Aaron Rowe, Foxy. I mean, what a strike for his first goal for the club.
Yeah, not a bad one, to be fair, for the first one. I don't know if he's going to get any more better than that in his career, to be honest. It was different class, to be fair to him. He's got that. I think he had one about 5 minutes later as well, which the lad blocked. I don't know if that was going in, but yeah, he's got that ability to go either on the outside or on the inside, and it'd be a nightmare to play against. And then once he's cut inside on his left foot like that, no keeper in the world saving that. And yeah, for it to be his first goal, and obviously Romany's first goal, it's big for them, and hopefully he can kick on now because he's been in and around it as well, and Carlos isn't afraid to put him on, even if it's the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes. He's right in amongst it, Aaron. If he's not sort of starting, he'll be on the bench, and it's a real good moment for him, and hopefully he can kick on from that.
How impressed were you, Michael, with Aaron's performance?
I was very impressed. I said, it's very difficult to play against any player that can go both ways, as David says. Straight away, as soon as you suss out that somebody's right-footed, you're trying as hard as possible to always keep him on the left. Now, when you've got somebody who, whichever way you show him, he'll take it. You've got problems from the off. So he's certainly got a lot going for him, and with the talent that he's shown there with that finish, then he's certainly got a bright future. Again, I think it's difficult sometimes because we're trying to assess 10, 12 young lads when the reality is when they're playing in a senior game for the first team in a league game, for example, where there's 3 points at stake, the chances are there's only going to be 1 or 2 that play, and they're going to be in amongst experienced players that'll guide them through. So sometimes when you throw 9, 10 young lads in together and you say, well, go on, then you're going to get kind of a little bit of a mixture in performance. But he stood up really well. I thought he did, he showed that he was certainly capable of handling it. And I'm sure that he'll be one that Carlos looks at and thinks, we've certainly got potential to develop him there.
Yeah, and then obviously we conceded just before half-time, Kamara drawing Plymouth level. Foxy's a little bit disappointing, wasn't it, from a defensive point of view? Firstly, for the overlap to happen, and then for Kamara to have that much room in the area.
Yeah, it was. I think it was more the timing of the goal, really. You're looking, as soon as you hit 40 minutes, you're 2-1 up after. You're looking to see it through to half-time. Can we get in late? I think it'd have been maybe a different second half, really. I think if we'd have managed to hang on till half-time, but unfortunately couldn't. And like I say, there was that sort of overlap. That they're very strong down the left-hand side. Plymouth, Danny Mayer and Connie Grant, and a lot of their attacks seemed to go down that left-hand side. And as you see with the second goal, there was an overlap, and it was an awkward one really for Josh Osterfield. He's sort of tracking back in, and Romany's sort of stepping out, and it's sort of just gone in between them, and it's an awkward one. And to be fair to the lad, he's timed his run into the box really well, and then obviously he's controlled it. And once you're 5-6 yards out with no one around you, he's gonna score. So yeah, I think it was more the timing, I think, of the goal that was the disappointing part. And it's a lot, like as we've spoken about a lot. There'll be lots of things to learn from, and I'm sure they'll dissect that goal, and hopefully players will learn from things that happened.
The first half was full of action at both ends. Second half, not quite the same. We had a lot of possession in the early stages, but then to concede in a goal that was very similar to the one we did at the end of the first half, Michael, again was frustrating, wasn't it?
Was, yeah. And then obviously it kind of takes the wind out of your sails a little bit when you put yourself into a strong position within the game, having led and then find yourself behind. And the good thing was from then on, the lads acquitted themselves well, and then they had a good go at it. So they were always in the game, which is a positive to take from. But yeah, again, just that little bit of, probably, as you say, for the second goal and third game, just that little bit of inexperience with regards to really taking ownership. So in the box there, I would quite like to have seen Critchlow come and just clear everything, be really aggressive. And well, that's going to come. He needs, as David says, he'll look back on that and he'll learn from it. And I'm pretty sure if you put him in that situation again, there's a different outcome. So that's the benefit when you break the game down of what you get out of today. And it's the same with the third goal, with the overlap where Danny Mayer gets in behind. I think there's a little bit of, it's the typical one of when a wide player's recovering to help his fullback, and you get that slight delay of who's taking who's dealing with the overlap. And again, loads of things to learn from. And on the big stage, the difference is when you play against first team players, the moment you have that lapse in concentration or that little bit of confusion, they're good enough to punish you. And that's what happened today. And as I say, there's no, as much as it is disappointing, you always want to go for it in the cup. I don't think there's any shame for them young lads in losing to that Plymouth team, because we've also got to remember that's a Plymouth team that, although they're kind of mid-table in League One, have had a full year together of a successful campaign in League Two, who are riding that wave still, and have been around each other and have got that consistency in how they play. over an 18-month period. So, you know, it's as I say, there's no shame in the kind of result and the outcome. I just think, like you say, the difference was probably that bit of experience, which is probably shown in the goals.
And that's the beauty of them having this experience, Foxy, isn't it? The fact that Michael said they'll take so much from it, they'll be able to learn from certain situations. But equally with Carlos Corberán, Danny Schofield, Jorge, Narcis as well, they'll be able to break down and dissect each individual player's performance, won't they? What they did right, what they did wrong. And that will be invaluable for them. Yeah,
it will. And, you know, I'm quite fortunate I get to see sort of what goes into these sort of debriefs after games and the detail they go to and how thorough they are with each individual. You know, it's not just to show them the goals and, right, let's move on to next week. There's a real detailed process of every game they play, and they'll all have the clips, they'll all go through it all, they'll all know what they need to improve on, and they'll sit down, like I say, they'll sit down with Danny Schofield mainly, I'd have thought, and he'll go through things, and I'm sure the players will have an opinion of what happened, and there'll be things they need to work on, and there'll be a plan in place for where we go from here. It's a shame we couldn't have got a result. It'd have been nice if to have gone through, and maybe could have got them an extra game and another appearance at the end of the month. But I think it certainly it'll give the manager plenty of food for thought, and in terms of the plans for these lads over the next 6 months and maybe even longer. And we spoke about it before on this. It's been a great experience for the lads, and like you say, it's just a shame there wasn't any fans there as well, because like you say, it did have that feel of as all the games do at the minute. They just have that feel of a sort of an intense reserve game. So it's a shame there wasn't a real crowd there, and they could have really embraced that. But look, there's plenty to take from it, plenty to learn from, plenty to work on, and hopefully we'll see the lads flourish going forward.
And then Alex Vallejo made his first start. We focused a lot on the younger players that played, but obviously Alex came in the summer. He's had to get used to English style, get up to speed fitness wise as well. How do you think he got on, Michael? Because he was playing the Jonathan Hogg type role, wasn't he?
Yeah, I thought he grew into the game, with his background and kind of his upbringing. We know he's always going to be competent with the football at his feet, and I think he showed that. And after he found his feet, after the first 10, 15 minutes, then I thought he gave a competent display. I think that's a feature of the way, again, that, as I say, Carlos is going to play, that whoever plays in that sitting role has also got to be able to be versatile and can drop into the back line as well, because that's a feature of the way they're going to play. Certainly against different formations, he likes to build out with an extra player at the back, and also out of possession. So there's going to be times where they're going to need that versatility. And the thing is with Hogger, he's very robust, and you know what you're going to get. But there's going to be a point in the season where for a time period, he might pick up an injury, and you're going to need that like for like replacement that can step in. And he certainly demonstrated that he can fill in that role. So I'm sure he'll be quite pleased to get that under his belt and can start building from it. But no, I thought he had a real steady game. And then obviously towards the end, he's managed to get in and block the cross, which could have made it into 4-2. So yeah, I think there's elements that you look at, and maybe a little bit of rust there at times. But on the whole, I thought he had a real steady game for a first showing.
Yeah, and Rolando Aarons came on as well, Foxy, for his debut for the club, and looked sharp in certain elements. Yeah,
he did. He has that little bit of pace, and that I thought he used his body well at times. And yeah, he'll be similar to Alex, really, in terms of he'll be glad he's got that out of the way. And look, he's hardly been in the building 5 minutes. He's probably got to know some of the players, and then none of them are there. So it's just like, it's just settling in, really. And I think it'll do him great that he's had that 25 minutes, I think it was. He's got that debut out of the way, and then now it's all about training. It's about learning the way that the club will want him to play, and hopefully taking it forward. Look, he's a player that's not played for a while, but hear him speak, and how he's been watching the team play, and he's wanted to come here for a while. So I think that's a real positive. And look, that debut's out of the way, and it's time for him now to knuckle down like a lot of the lads and try and get himself into that starting 11 for a league game.
Do you think he's a good addition, Michael?
Yeah, I do. I think that, from what I've seen, I think that's an area that I would say that, he is a welcome addition. Just for me, you can never have enough attacking options to turn to in games, and given where he's come from, you'd like to think that he's coming with the confidence of a Premier League player. Now it might take him a little bit of time to get up to speed, and I'm pretty sure the fact that he's been watching Huddersfield for so long is certainly might have been Carlos in his ear, certainly, trying to get him used to how they play, especially with the way that he'll have to adapt to how they train. So again, I think it's going to have to be one of them where, they're probably going to expect, certainly the fans will expect him to come in and hit the ground running. But again, I think there needs to be that little bit of, realism around the fact that it might take him a little bit of time to get up to speed. But, he's certainly got the quality. And as I say, for me, as a manager, when you're on the touchline, there's nothing better than being able to turn around and know that you've got 2-3 different players that you can bring on that can change a game, because ultimately that's the most important part of it, certainly in the Championship as well, because you come up against such a vast array of styles. Some teams will sit in where you need a little bit more creativity, other teams will play expansive where you need quicker players on the counter. So whenever you've got that versatility in across your bench and in your squad, then it's massive. So again, it's another little piece in the jigsaw for Carlos, as you can see, as he moves towards the way that, long term he really wants to take the club. And to bring him in off the back of signing his new contract, that tells me that they've certainly done their homework and they've done the research, and they think that he can have a big part to play at the club.
And with that, Foxy, obviously we spoke a lot about squad depth. In terms of food for thought for Carlos, we spoke about certain individuals, but there's players out there that, like you said, did have positive performances that Carlos could look at and say, well, Pat Jones, for example, has been on the bench in this game. Maybe after this experience, I could bring him on in future games and trust him to be able to do a job. Equally, the likes of Aaron Rowe, for example.
Yeah, and that's why I think it was so important for him to see these players in that sort of environment. He got a little bit more of a realistic understanding of what the lads can do. And, personally, do I think chucking Pat Jones on for 20 minutes is it's not going to hurt anyone. I think he looks lively. He looks like he can run in behind. He's got pace. He's not what you want to play against in the last 20 minutes. So, look, he's certainly held his hand up to say, look, if I'm not going to start at the minute, or, if there's a couple of injuries maybe, then look, I can play for you. I can come on and make an impact. And, like Mark says, you can never have too many attacking players. You never have too many options to change things from the bench. And a couple of the lads have held their hands up and said, look, I can be a part of this right now. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting conversations next week in terms of where these lads go from here. And, I'm sure they'll go on the different routes sort of after next week. And some might be in and around it more. Some might need a little bit more time. But, yeah, it's certainly made things a lot more. I'm sure the manager will have a lot more understanding in his mind about players that he can have for the here and now.
Yeah, it certainly will be an interesting week ahead of our game against Watford. Just finally, Michael, with that, obviously we were able to rest a number of players that have played week in, week out pretty much entirely over the Christmas period. That could be vital going into the Championship game, again, with the young lads having the experiences that they had today to just add to that squad depth. Yeah,
and I think when you pick the game apart, I think they're the positives that you've got to look for. The senior lads have had a rest, which is great going into, the rest of the season. Carlos has had a good look at what was behind that, and he's now got a better idea of, if he does pick up injuries along the way, who he's going to show a little bit more of a trust in. And so all round, I think that's what, he'll have taken from today's game. I think it's pretty clear that, there certainly, it didn't appear to me by the team that he's named that there was any pressure. Sometimes at clubs, there's pressure to get through in the cup because of finances. It becomes really important to clubs. And, with the team that he's gone with, there's obviously been conversations behind the scenes with regards to what they're prioritising. And, they've gone with what they think's better. As I say, that's what I like about the club at the moment. What I see is I see everything seems to be looking at the bigger picture. It doesn't seem to be just trying to navigate from game to game and, you know, and hope for the best. There does seem to be a lot of long-term planning, and those sort of clubs over time, in my opinions, are the ones that really establish themselves and are able to build. And the good thing that they've got is, you know, if the aspirations are to at some point return to the Premier League, you know, they've got that experience now of what it takes to be up there. So when they drop back down, you know, they've already got that one eye on what the bigger picture might look like and what they might need to have in place to sustain that over a longer period. Because, you know, when Huddersfield went up, a lot of people said that, you know, for a club, were they big enough to handle the Premier League? But I look at some of the clubs in the Premier League over the last few years, and I'd say they're as big as some of the clubs that have been up there. So it's certainly doable, but it's about getting those, you know, those processes in place and that stability. And that's what I like about the club. So as I say, they'll reflect on today, they'll break it down. Always disappointing to lose football matches, and that everybody will be disappointed about that. But looking at the bigger picture, I think there's far more to take away from that game than there is to actually just, you know, nail it down to winning or losing today.
Yeah, absolutely spot on there. It is disappointing to exit the Emirates FA Cup, but equally there's tons of positives as Huddersfield Town fans that we can take from this game. Foxy, Michael, thank you very much for joining us, and Huddersfield Town fans, thank you for watching.